years ago, my best friend Ashley had the bright idea to rent out an Airbnb for spring break. She wanted the full experience: beach, parties, no parents. I wasn't totally on board at first, but when I saw how nice the place was, I caved. It was a cute little condo near Fort Lauderdale Beach, and the price wasn't bad, so we booked it. A few weeks later, we got there and checked in. The moment I stepped inside, something felt off. The air was heavy, like that weird tension before a storm. I don't know how to explain it, but I have a gut feeling about these things sometimes, and this place just rubbed me the wrong way. I told Ashley, but she brushed it off. She was already in vacation mode, pouring shots and blasting music. And we hit the beach not long after, and it was packed. Music everywhere, people drinking, the whole spring break vibe. The energy helped me shake off the weird feeling from earlier, and I started to relax. I even pulled out my speaker and played some Bob Marley. It felt good to just sit in the sun, drink, and enjoy the moment. Then Ashley stood up suddenly. "I'm gonna go meet someone real quick," she said. I asked who, and she told me it was an old friend who had happened to be nearby. "Be right back," she added before walking off. I did not think much of it. We were both adults, and it was broad daylight with thousands of people around. I'd figured she'd be back in a few minutes. An hour passed. No Ashley. I started getting annoyed. I assumed she was catching up with whoever this person was and lost track of time. I called her, straight to voicemail. I scanned the crowd, but it was impossible to pick out one person in the sea of people. Another hour went by, and now I was pissed. The sun was setting, I was sweaty, and I didn't want to be sitting on the beach alone anymore. I figured she probably went back to the Airbnb, so I made the 10-minute walk by myself. But when I got there, the place was empty. I called her again. Nothing. Sent a text. No reply. At this point, my annoyance shifted to full-on worry. Ashley wasn't the type to ghost me, especially in an unfamiliar place. I kept calling and texting, but there was nothing. Hours passed, and my mind went to the worst places. Had she gotten too drunk? Lost? Was she with someone who didn't have good intentions? By midnight, I was freaking out. My hands were shaking. My chest was tight. I kept pacing, checking my phone, looking out the window. Then, just past midnight, I heard it. A soft tapping at the door. I ran to it, yanked it open, and felt my stomach drop. Ashley was on the ground, barely holding herself up. Her face was bruised, her lip was split, and her clothes were torn. Blood was smeared down her arms, and she looked like she could barely keep her eyes open. I pulled her inside, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold on to her. "What happened?" I kept asking. She mumbled something, but she was too weak to talk. I called an ambulance. At the hospital, after some fluids and stitches, she finally told me. The old friend that she met up with, it was her ex-boyfriend from high school. She hadn't seen him in years, but he messaged her saying that he was in town and wanted to catch up. She figured why not. Turns out, he was a full-blown scammer now. He bragged about how much money he was making, and Ashley, probably feeling bold from the drinks, told him he should give her some, or she'd expose him. She did not think much of it, just joking around, but he did not take it that way. He convinced her to go back to his hotel for another drink. She barely remembers what happened after that. She woke up groggy, feeling sick. He had drugged her. She pieced together bits and pieces. Him on top of her, the way her body felt sore and violated. When she tried to fight back, he beat her bad. Then, instead of just leaving her there, he did something even worse. He drove her back to our Airbnb, dumped her outside like trash, and sped off. We called the police, filed reports, but this guy knew how to cover his tracks. He had fake names, fake IDs, everything, and they never caught him. To this day, he's still out there. Ashley went through hell after that. Therapy, depression, all of it. But she made it out. She turned her pain into something productive. She volunteers at women's shelters now, helping people who've been through what she has. She even started going to church again. She's stronger than she's ever been. I wish I could say I feel safe knowing he's out there somewhere, but I don't. I just hope no one ever else has to go through what Ashley did. If you're going on spring break, please watch your drinks, never go off alone, and always share your location with someone you trust. You never know who's waiting for an opportunity. I live in a beach town that's a major tourist spot, especially for spring break and the 4th of July. Last year, during spring break, I got off of work a little later than usual and decided to hit up one of my favorite bars. It was packed, as expected, with college kids partying. I'm single, so I did not mind. I grabbed a drink and sat at the bar, watching the game on TV when this girl approached me. She was stunning. Blonde hair, a tiny nose, and a distinct birthmark on her cheek. She walked right up to me and said I was handsome and that she wanted to buy me a drink. I laughed, told her I already had one, and ended up buying her one instead. We got to talking. She said she was visiting for spring break with some friends, but they were lame and had already went back to their beach house. She was flirtatious, hands on my thigh, leaning in so close our faces almost touched. I won't lie, I was enjoying it. After a couple of drinks, she asked if I wanted to go for a walk on the beach. Being slightly buzzed and knowing the area like the back of my hand, I agreed. The beach was mostly empty, except for a few people scattered here and there. We walked for a bit, and then she stopped suddenly and pulled me in for a kiss. Her hands were all over me. It caught me off guard, but I kissed her back for a few seconds before telling her we should slow down. I mentioned that we'd both been drinking, and I did not want to do anything that we might regret. She laughed, called me a gentleman, and then suddenly said she couldn't find her phone. We started looking around in the sand. The moonlight was decent, but I reached into my pocket to grab my phone for the flashlight. That's when I realized that something was off. My phone wasn't there. My wallet and house keys were gone too. I turned to call out to her, but she was gone. Just like that. In 1 second she was there, and the next, she wasn't. I spun in a slow circle, scanning the beach. Nothing. No movement, no sound, just the distant crash of the waves. My mind was racing. Had she robbed me? I retraced my steps back to the bar, hoping I had just left my things there in my drunken haze. But when I asked the bartender, he shook his head. No one had turned anything in. Frustrated, I walked home, breaking into my own place since I did not have my keys. I called my bank and locked my cards, changed my password for my laptop, and just sat there, feeling like an idiot. And then, at 2 a.m., someone knocked on my door. It was a slow, deliberate knock. Not hurried, not aggressive, just steady. I froze. Who the hell will be knocking at this hour? I walked to the door, but hesitated before opening it. Instead, I peeked through the peephole. No one was there. I stood there for a second, then cracked the door open just enough to see outside. On my welcome mat sat a small, beat-up brown paper bag with a single red rose resting on the top. Inside the bag, my phone, my wallet, my house keys. I grabbed the bag and slammed the front door shut, my heart pounding. I checked my wallet. Everything was inside. Cash, cards, even the crumpled up receipts I never threw away. Nothing seemed missing. And then I turned on my phone. It had been factory reset. Gone. Everything. Every message, every contact, every photo. Wiped clean. The next day, I took it to the AT&T store to see if anything had been pulled from it. They said there was no way to tell. It was like I had just taken it out of the box brand new. I changed all my passwords again, checked my bank and stock accounts. No signs of a breach. To this day, I have no idea who she was or what the hell actually happened. Did she take my stuff just to scare me? Was it some kind of prank? A warning? And why reset my phone? I still think about it sometimes. That birthmark on her face. The way she touched my leg. The way she disappeared. And most of all, the way my stuff came back. Like she wanted me to know she could take it at any time if she wanted. Two years ago, my buddies and I decided to go to San Diego for spring break. I had just gotten out of a 5-year relationship, and I needed to let loose. We booked an Airbnb near the beach. Nothing fancy, but it was nice enough for a week of drinking and partying. On the first night, we hit a few bars, and that's when I met Corinne. She was with a group of friends, and somehow, our groups ended up hanging out together. My buddies did not have much luck with her friends, but Corinne and I clicked fast. She had this wild, carefree vibe, and when she asked if I wanted to head back to my place, I did not hesitate. Back at the Airbnb, we ended up on the balcony. It was reckless, crazy, and exactly what I needed to get my ex out of my head. When we were done, we laid there for a while, looking up at the sky. I offered to get her an Uber home, but she said she'd rather stay the night. I wasn't about to argue with that. At some point, I passed out. I don't know how long I was asleep before something woke me up. At first, I wasn't sure what it was. The room was dark, but I could tell something felt off. I turned over, expecting Corinne to be beside me, but the bed was empty. My eyes adjusted, and that's when I saw her. She was standing in the corner of the room, completely still, facing the window. I sat up. "Corinne, are you okay?" She did not respond right away. Then, slowly, she turned her head toward me. Her face was blank, like she wasn't really there. Then she turned back to the window, unlocked it, and pushed it open. I sat up straighter. "Hey, what are you doing?" She stepped onto the windowsill. That's when she whispered it. "Make the voices stop." And then she jumped. For a second, I couldn't process what had just happened. It did not feel real. But when I ran to the window and looked down, I saw her crumpled on the lawn below. I started yelling, waking up everyone in the house. My friend Derek, who was in medical school, sprinted downstairs before anyone else. By the time I got outside, he was kneeling beside her, checking her pulse. She was still breathing. She was barely conscious, groaning in pain. Her collarbone looked wrong, and her shoulder was clearly dislocated. I kept asking her what happened, but she wasn't making sense, just mumbling about voices and shadows. We called an ambulance, and by the time paramedics got there, she was coming out of it a little more. They asked if she had taken anything. That's when she mumbled something about sleeping pills. Later at the hospital, we found out what happened. She had taken some kind of prescription sleeping pill before coming to bed, and she had also been drinking all night. The mix had caused her to hallucinate badly. She thought something was whispering to her, telling her to kill herself. She was lucky. Her injuries weren't life-threatening, but she was clearly shaken. I stayed at the hospital for a while, waiting to see if she was okay. But when she was stable, she barely looked at me. I did not know if she was embarrassed, ashamed, or just wanted to forget the whole thing. I sent her a text later, just to check in. She never responded. A few days later, I realized she had blocked my number. I haven't heard from her since that night. I still think about her sometimes, how fast everything changed. One minute we were having the wildest night of my life, and the next, she was broken on the lawn, convinced the devil was whispering to her. I hope she's okay.